So in the previous video, we talked about templates and we learned the role that they will play in our Slurpit operations. But right now, I want to talk about planning. So I'm going to go to planning, and these are going to be some plans for you to run against your devices. So we have an ARP plan here, CDP plan, and so on. And these are just some basic examples for you that we put there, so you have something to work with. You can also add your own planning as well. This is extremely flexible, but these are just some examples so you can start working with them. So since we already have something in here, I'm going to try and explain from the existing ones, and I will show you how you can edit and what are the different parameters. So let's see what each planning contains. So I'm going to go to this one. I can edit this, or I can edit it from here. And this is an R plan. So inside each planning, we have different parsers for different operating systems. Here we have Arista EOS, Aruba OS, Cisco iOS, NX OS, and so on. And we have basically 16 rows, but we only see 5 of them in this page. And if I try to show all of them, these are all the 16 vendors that we have with different parsers. Keep in mind that each parser is only designed for a specific command and a specific operating system. So I'm going to reduce it down to 5 one more time. And so let me work with this one, Cisco iOS. This is the operating system, this is the templates, and this is the command. So these two should match. So if you're running show IP ARP, make sure that you're using show IP ARP template. If you are using show IP interface brief, then you should use the template for show IP interface brief, not, for example, show interfaces or show IP interface. The command and template should match to result in the best output. Otherwise, it might work in some cases, but it is very rare that they actually produce the accurate result. So this is how we can modify it. Keep in mind that if we run this planning against our Cisco iOS devices, then Slurpit would dismiss the ones for the entries for other operating systems, such as NX OS or Aruba OS. We don't care about those because we are only running this planning against our iOS device. So in my case, if I run this planning, this is going to be the only thing that will run. I can change the command here if I want, but if I do that, I have to change the template here as well. And as you can see, you don't have to copy the template name from somewhere else. There is a drop-down menu, and if I type in, for example, show interfaces, whatever, you see the help here as well. So you don't have to look for this template elsewhere in a repository or something similar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the main page, and I will show you how you can run this planning and actually see and observe the result of the planning. So I'm going to close this, and there are actually a couple of ways to do that, to run the planning. The way I like it is to go to the main page and run each planning individually. For example, here, if I run this one, ARP, it would run only the ARP planning against my device. But there's also another way. So if I go to devices here, if I go here, scroll right, click on the ellipsis and click on schedule now, it would schedule all the plannings that I had, ARP, CDP, hardware info, and so on, against my devices, or this device only in this case. Now, you can also go to the device itself and schedule it from here. And again, it will run all the plannings against your device. But I'm just gonna go here and run this. So ARP is scheduled. I'm going to pause the video and come back and see how we can observe the results. Okay, I have to tell you something else. If you run the task from here, run the planning from here, it would run this single task against all your devices. But if you choose the other method, go to devices, and from here, schedule it from here, then it would run all the plannings against your single device. So if I click on this, schedule now, it would run all the plannings against R1. But from the main page, it would run this planning against all the devices. So if I go here to devices R1 to collected data to ARP, we see the ARP information here. Go to devices again, go to R10, we go to collected data, and ARP info is here as well. And I'm sure if I go to other devices, we only have the ARP data, but not the interfaces data or MAC addresses or routing table, because we only ran ARP against all the devices. So there is also another way to check that. If I go to collected data here on the left side, click on ARP, you can see all the data from all the devices that we fetched regarding the ARP planning. And from here, you can sort things out and reorder them. So let me now show you how you can create a planning from scratch. But before that, let's actually go to one of the plannings. There is something that I forgot to tell you, and that is the report column. So I'm going to go to one of these plannings, maybe ARP. And if I scroll down, you're going to see this report column here. Basically, if you're working with, if you have a multi-vendor environment, if you're working with devices from different vendors, Cisco, Juniper, Arista, and so on, the key when you fetch the data from the devices, the key can't be different for different protocols and basically different operations. For example, the key for IP address might be IP on some device and IP underscore address on another device. Same with MAC addresses and so on. MAC address could be MAC, MAC, or MAC underscore address, or MAC underscore ADDR. So there are all these different basically key words that are different between devices, and we want to kind of standardize or normalize the incoming data. And the way we do that is by creating these mappings. For example, we say IP address, address, and neighbor, for example, is going to be mapped to the IP address column. Age, aging, expire, expiry, again mapped to age. And same with MAC, type, and interface. And under IP address and MAC address, you see two different things, and that is type and key. And that is for DNS lookup for IP address here, and MAC vendor lookup for MAC address here. So if these are configured and running, then what we do here is whenever we are retrieving some IP addresses using one of the plannings, we're going to do a DNS lookup on that IP address to resolve the, basically to get to the FQDN. Same thing with MAC. If we find a MAC from, let's say, the R planning, we are going to look up the vendor for that MAC and identify the vendor. So yeah, here we have interface. The key in the incoming payload could be interface or port. We're going to map it to these columns. So with that, I'm going to go back and go to planning one more time. Add a planning. Adding a planning is pretty simple. I am going to create a planning, call it Nexus feature, and return data only for 30 days. Comments. I'm just going to put a comment here, and that is our comment. I can add a task scheduler to run this planning on an interval rather than manually. So start on, how about today, launch maybe yearly, and or maybe monthly, once a month is enough, I think. And that doesn't make much sense for this planning, because it's very unlikely that the features of a Nexus switch would change every month. So this is just an example. I'm going to submit, and this should be created now. So I'm going to cancel, and this is here. But right now, I don't have anything associated with this. I don't have any operating system or template associated with this Nexus feature planning. So I'm gonna not that this one. I'm gonna click on this plus button here, and here I can actually go ahead and select NXOS. And from templates, since we are basically displaying the features of a Cisco Nexus switch, the command is show feature, right? Show feature, and it would put, the nice thing about this is it would put the relative command based on what you choose here. Okay, before wrapping up this video, I just want to show you something else which is important. Here inside planning, I'm going to choose one of them. And over here, you see a key and value pair, which is key and the value is yes. So if you want to configure that, you go here and you set the value here to yes, and you configure basically a key. Well, what do we need a key for? Well, sometimes we just want to have some unique results. If I go to my collected data here, this is a table, right? And in here, I'm inside the historic data, meaning if I have this already in my database, if I run the same planning again, and if the value is exactly the same, identical regarding each column, I am going to retrieve that information and put it inside the historic data tab regardless. But sometimes we just want to have some unique results, meaning we only want to show the entry, the row basically, if something has changed regarding one of the columns. And in order to define that, in order to say which columns, we configure a key for that particular column. So right now, if I run a planning and if the IP address or MAC address or the interface value is changed, only then I'm going to show it here inside unique results. Otherwise, it would go into the historic data table. So if I go to unique results, if you check each entry, you see that there is definitely something unique about each entry. We have R1, not a problem, but for example, the IP addresses are different. Normally, if you don't have anything, everything would go into historic data. But if you want unique results, you instruct Slurpit to look for these specific columns, and only if the value attached to these columns have changed, then we're going to show them inside the unique results table. And in the end, you can always change the order of these columns by dragging and dropping them here and there. And basically, you will style it the way you want. So that wraps up this particular video. I will see you in the next one.